I'm glad you're all here. I'm glad you're taking the time to be part of this update. Today is kind of important to bring us together, and we're going to focus a lot on the budget. That has had some good turns to it since we last talked, and I think that's a cause for us to all understand where we are and the challenges that still lie ahead. And to help me do that, I've asked our finance director to put together a series of slides. And he's going to come forward and we're going to talk about that. I know you're going to have questions. Those are going to occur at the end. So just kind of make a mental note of what you want to talk about so that we get to those today. That's going to be a key part of what we want to talk about. So with that, Jeff, if you could come forward and kind of work on this together.
Okay. Good morning. Is that working? It is?
Yes.
Okay. I can't tell. So I probably don't even need this, but this is probably for recording. I could just boom it out. But anyway, we tried to keep our costs down a little bit. We only gave you a few of the slides, the ones that didn't come up so well on the screen, you know, some of the charts and whatnot. But so, you know, if you can't make something out or if something's not clear, you know, yeah, we'll try to do the questions at the end, but just flag me down and we'll see if, you know, we can clarify something that's just up on the screen that maybe not be in full clarity right now. What I wanted to show you, just to start off, is where we ended up last year. And I don't think that one's part of your handout. I think it's the next one. So yeah, just this first one I think is actually fairly clear. But we ended up the year about and I'm talking about fiscal year 11, $2.2 million over our fiscal policy target, which is an ending fund balance of 8.3%, which is roughly 1 month's worth of expenditures. That's what 8.3 is 112. So we knew going into last spring that we were going to be a little higher than anticipated. We were expecting to be about $900,000 or so higher. We actually ended up being about 2.2. So that's what that parenthetical thought there says. We're about 1.3 more than we anticipated. So we knew we were going to have a little bit higher last year, and we wanted to carry that forward. So as we were developing fiscal 12 current year budget scenarios, we knew we were going to be about $4.6 million short. That included the extra 900 that we were anticipating. So, you know, as we're chasing these revenues down, as I'll show you a little bit later, you know, we've been rolling things forward. So we've always had this 1 year or even 2 year outlook and trying to anticipate. So where did we get the 2.2 million? Just real quick, we basically just, you know, we didn't have a flood. We didn't have to use our contingency funds. That was about $550,000, $600,000 last year that we just didn't have to tap, which is fantastic. Use those for emergencies. We had a reduction in Parks and Rec and Development Services. We just didn't need to subsidize those funds from the general fund as much as we had thought previously. And then we had an overall decrease, about 4.5% underspend in our services and supplies within just throughout the departments. It was pretty much citywide. So those were all really good outcomes. Revenues, unfortunately, we didn't see any uptick in the revenues. They came in kind of spot on to what we thought, which was kind of unfortunate. Those are the areas we'd like to be wrong on, but unfortunately they were still down. So we managed the expenses accordingly and kind of offset the loss of revenues.
You know, a couple of the bigger departments in the city are police and fire, where we take in about 60 to 62% of our total spending. We're very close to their budget. Police came in just $78,000 below their budget, and fire was somewhere around $156,000. And had either of those departments had more calls for overtime in that spring period, or we would have had a more traditional fire season, some of these results would have been trending downward. But all departments, save one, and that was an expected occurrence, did come in under their spending. And that's good management by all of you as employees, your supervisors, and your departments to bring in these kinds of results. We have a very thin margin when it comes to contingency. And when we don't use the contingency, it's there for us to restock the contingency in coming years. It's the year when we would use it that's going to be fresh money because it's then expended.
And just so you know, the contingency fund, we have a lot of flexibility on how we can use that. It's a little bit different. You might hear what we have a stabilization fund. We don't have a lot in there. We do have a little bit in there now. Stabilization fund, the state has some very specific things that we can only spend on that. Contingency is kind of broad. It's wide open. We have a lot of flexibility. At least, council has a lot of flexibility that they can use on that. Our next slide is just this top portion, top half of this sheet that you have. And that's basically a summary, again, of where we expect it to be coming into the fiscal year. Remember, I mentioned we had a $4.6 million budget shortfall, which included some of the savings that we had anticipated from the prior year. The first column there, or I guess that's the middle column where the numbers are, that's just basically what our plan was to meet that $4.6 million shortfall. That's what we presented back to council, and that's what we approved into the budget process and filed with the state this last June. The column on the far right, where it says projected to date, are the items that we've identified in those action areas and what we've identified to meet those action areas and how we've come along. And you can see some actions we've fully anticipate full savings, like the SSSI project, the reorganization project that we've been tackling, and some we have not. So at the end of the day, we basically, as we stand right now, we're sitting at about a 1.3, I'm just going to round the numbers, $1.3 million of those savings actions that we just haven't implemented or fully identified to date. The nice part about that, if you go back to the previous slide, remember we had a savings of about $1.3 million. So what this is showing you is we're basically coming in for fiscal 12, we expect a flat picture, assuming that these savings aren't going to be implemented. So the savings that we got last year, if we don't get the budget savings this year, we can just roll those savings into the current fiscal year and meet our fiscal budget needs for fiscal year 12. Does that make sense?
And still meet the council's budget priorities.
Absolutely. This is all focused towards reaching that 8.3% ending fund balance. Okay.
I think on this slide, I want you to be looking at this one, because what's happening in this interim legislative period is we have state leaders that are looking at how local governments have been funded. Cities and counties throughout the state have experienced different magnitudes of this recession. It's been very, very severe in North Las Vegas. You've probably seen them in the newspaper. It's been very severe here in Sparks. But all cities are not the same under our current tax rules. And we're hoping to create some type of change. And this slide here shows you the population in each of our 5 largest cities. And then it shows you the amount of tax rate they're using. And that's property taxes, which accounts for about 38% of all of our revenues now. And that rate is vastly different between cities in Las Vegas and Henderson. We've always been very comparable to Reno. And you can see North Las Vegas there at $1.16. When you look at their budgets, and they generally have, in this set of cities, very similar service profiles. And that's all of their expenditures in the general fund. When you divide that by population, you can see a vast difference between the revenues you have to provide services on a per resident basis. And you can see there we have a large difference. And if we could get some changes in tax policy, in not increasing taxes, but changing some of the portions of taxes which work against older cities, such as depreciation and the like, we can begin to more moderate future impacts of down cycles upon our community and others. The next column over is the assessed valuation. And we're going to show you some slides a little bit later where you can see a tremendous growth in assessed valuation in our community and then a tremendous fall off. But it's that ability for us to change our value of our community. It's very, very challenging under current tax policy. And having done what we did in that huge growth period, watching a good part of that erode by falling property values, we're at about $22,000 per resident. And again, it's important we know that our playing field is very restricted. The council controls very little of their revenues. Jeff's study a year ago put it at the council has control over 4% of their revenues. 4%. That's not going to lead to a lot of upside on revenues, and you can see the inputs up there in comparison. So keep in mind that our city is fighting on a legislative level to create some incremental change in tax policy, because we think this deck needs to be cut more fairly.
Okay, the actual next two slides, I believe you also have, it's the bottom half of this first sheet that you've got here. Just wanted to show you a little bit about, where our revenues come from. This pie chart tells you where pretty much what the property taxes are. About 36% of this whole pie. The intergovernmental revenue, that's a function. It's actually a couple of things in there, but that's primarily C taxes. Something that's called fair share taxes, which is another offshoot of C taxes, and some grant revenue in there. And obviously the next biggest piece of that pie is license and permits. Those three pieces historically and continually are about 85 or higher % of the entire revenue of the city. The next slide is, you've got it here, it's at the top of the back part of your page. Again, those same revenue sources, the three major ones, and this is what Sean was alluding to earlier. The bars on this chart show the assessed valuation, and that's that growth that Sean was talking about that we experienced in the early 2000s. And you can see how it spiked up in 2009 was the peak, which is kind of interesting. It shows you the kind of lag time that we have on some of our revenues. The recession started in 2007. But the way the appraisal process works is that there's a inherent lag in that, and so we're just now starting with 2009, starting to see those property valuations significantly decline. You can see some of the other revenues like C taxes and license and permits peaked earlier, back pretty much in correlation with when the recession started, 2007, 2008, right in that period. So basically what we're seeing now is C taxes, the sales taxes, flattening out. You can see that there in that kind of that middle line there. That's starting to flatten out in the last couple of years, which is really good because that thing just really fell off a cliff. License and permits are still falling, not to the extent that C taxes did, but they're more steady. We've seen a steady but slow decline there, and they do continue to drop a little bit as general activity in the area and the regions and slows down. But property taxes, honestly, is what we're watching the most closely these days, and you can see that's still a fairly significant decline. That trend line just isn't, it's not a pretty one.
A couple of things that I wanted to add to Jeff's points here. If you watch that red property tax line, keep an eye on what the newspaper's reporting in the Reno-Sparks area for the median price of a home. And that's going to be a huge barometer for us, as our community is going to be expecting a $1 to $3 million drop in property values, taxes next year. Now, that's a big drop for us, $1 to $3 million. We're going to know a lot more about that come December, and that will begin to be probably one of the key focus. Also, watch for the monthly stories on sales tax as they come in. So far, so good. In terms of it looks like the sales taxes are beginning to moderate and begin to move forward. But as Jeff ties these lines back into the past, he goes back on property tax to about 2005. He takes sales tax back to 2003. These three big revenues are the three we're using to look at how much we should be expending on personnel costs. They're the ones that control 85% of the revenues coming to the city, and we need to be responsive. We're currently running the city at personnel levels that are equal to 1997. And that is related to the increase in costs we've had during the period when the city was reacting to inflation and the retractions we've had to make in a very short period of time. We believe that we're on a sustainable course if we can match the changes that occur in property tax, and we cannot see a double dip. But I wanted to take just a moment here to tie our number of personnel back. It falls all the way back to 1997. And we did use a policy to say to the council we wanted to bring our personnel costs back. Whether it was 80% or 76%, we knew we couldn't sustain 90% in this type of fall. And our policies and our sustainability plans have put us in a very positive direction there. And right now, we're holding a steady course. With these inputs, with this employee complement, we're holding a steady course. What lies ahead, we'll have to enter together and make good decisions as a team.
The last slide that you have on your handouts, again, gave this to you just because the numbers probably didn't show up on the screen too easy to see. Again, just wanted to show the trending of our total revenues, total expenditures in the general fund, and our ending fund balance since, again, the recession began. And you can see it right there, that the blue, let's see, on yours it'd be the darker, the lighter color is the revenue lines, the darker color bar is the expenditures. And you can see basically how we've been matching, trying to follow that down. As the revenues have dropped significantly, you know, from about 66 million, call it, down to 53 million, what we're expecting this year. Yeah, that's a significant drop, and we've dropped the expenses, you know, accordingly. You can see that early on, from 2007, we did utilize the fund balance pretty significantly. That was the council's direction at that point, to drop that fund balance from 9.6 million down to 5.3 million. And it's kind of stayed, you know, relatively, you know, flat from there. You know, that's pretty much our target line right there. That's gonna fluctuate a little bit up and down as expenses, you know, come and go. But again, remember, our overall goal is to maintain 8.3% of our expenditures. So since the recession, total revenues are down 19.1%. Expenditures are down 20.1%. That seems to be, you know, just a reasonable, prudent thing to do. Fund balance has dropped from 41.1%. So again, just using our resources.
This next slide kind of reflects back on what I was saying. You know, we entered the beginning of the last decade with many more employees to provide services than we have today. And that is not in correlation with our population, which you can see is still growing. We were the single agency in Washoe County that grew in population last year. I'm not positive we're going to be maintaining population growth going forward. It'll greatly depend on the absorption of foreclosed homes in the market. And as I stand here today, we have 1,800 homes in the foreclosure process in the city of Sparks. So there's more coming in terms of us finding our footing in our housing markets. And so that's one to keep in mind. What clearly has been evidence is that the employees in this organization have been put in a position of dramatic change in a short period of time. We're not the same city we were in 2007. But I'm also very proud of what we've done to pull together, and the team we have in our combined public works, that's $1, and our parks department coming together to form a maintenance pool has been very challenging for those employees. And you know, the service levels in the summer and in the winter are going to remain very challenging. But I think we have a good core to begin to take our path forward. I don't think there's much more you can do in the area of reducing employee totals and still maintain service levels that would be acceptable to the city.
Okay, just kind of to wrap up the financial piece here, just wanted to give you a brief look of where we stand right now and what we're facing looking forward. It's kind of still early in the game, but we're going to be ramping up our budgeting process with council, probably with a retreat in January, I imagine. And as Sean had said, the real big data point that we're waiting on right now is that valuation information from the assessor's office. They're working on that right now. I bug them quite often, but they won't give me much these days. I'll probably get the first blush look at it, if you will, probably later this month. And then they will be publishing the valuations, that thick thing we get that's published in the newspaper, middle of next month, I believe, to the end of next month. And you'll get those valuation cards sent out to you. So once those are sent out, I can get a pretty decent look, because I can get a per parcel to parcel download from their system and get a good look as to what we're expecting. But we are expecting it to be down. Sean had mentioned earlier, one of the biggest barometers that we watch is the median home price, and it's down 15 to 18% from the last year. 5% of a decrease for us is about $1 million. So that's kind of where I'm coming up with that $1 to $3 million shortfall. If valuations drop 5%, that's $1 million to us. If it drops 10, that's 2, so on and so forth. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now, and we'll see. Right now we're just kind of on a wait and see, and we have to see what their work is. And just so you know how the process plays out, once the assessor sends out those initial valuations, every property owner has until January 15th to file their appeals. Which are either going to be approved or denied, and then if it's denied, you have the ability to appeal that again to the State Board of Equalization after that, and then I believe those are managed by May 15th. So this is quite a process, and it takes a long time before we actually get the final picture, and honestly, we don't get the final picture until after our budget is filed. It's just kind of odd that way, but we get pretty close. And the last several years, it's been easier since that nasty little thing about abatement. If y'all remember that, abatement's gone. The valuations have taken all that down, so it's getting a little bit easier to calculate. But it is still a process that we need to go through. So that is our next biggest data point. Sean mentioned, we may be looking at a double dip recession. I'll give you an argument that we probably haven't left the recession locally, at least. Nationally, we all see the news, the international news. It definitely has local implications. It's funny how things happening in Greece can have an effect here in Sparks, but it absolutely does. You talk about consumer confidence. Banks get a little nervous and they stop lending. They tighten up their credit. It's really hard to get a loan these days, and things just tighten up. As things get more and more volatile on the international and national scenes, Washington's in gridlock right now. We don't know what's going on. That just tends to people, tighten up a little bit. They get more conservative. They get a little afraid, maybe. They're a little afraid of their job possibly, and then they just stop spending. It's a very natural thing to do. That affects us. So, as Sean had mentioned, that we're seeing some stabilization now, and boy, I hope it continues. It's not growing. I don't see anything that's going to grow this economy necessarily right now, but I think a flat picture on sales tax, taxable sales would be probably the best we could hope for. But it's tenuous, so we watch it and we see what's going on. So other things, just wanted to mention, we have a ongoing liability. We have post-retirement health benefits. That's what a new accounting, or relatively new accounting standard says we have to book this liability for our future liability. Right now it stands at about $5 million, and it grows every year. Unless we fund it. Right now we don't have a dedicated funding source for that. So it's just, there's a lot of challenges to city and government, state as well, finances. And this is just a few of the bullet points that we're kind of anticipating and actively looking forward as we head into fiscal 13.
I'm going to stop here and invite some questions while Jeff's up here on the city's financial picture of revenues. Any of you have any questions in those areas?
I know we talk a lot about going down from the peak of 07, 06, 08, around that time frame. But how do we stand in like the late 90s where our community was more normal? We don't have this upturn, this peak that basically we never had before and which we never will have before. So how do we stand going back in time to the late 90s and 2000? I mean, where do we stand? I mean, employees, our staffing levels are what, the same as like 97? If I heard that right? Mm-hmm. And looking at the chart, I mean, basing off of 99, I mean, we're higher assessed value, we're higher property taxes, we're higher on C-tax, and we're a tad higher for licenses and permits. I mean, where do you guys, what's your vision on when we compare those two timeframes and kind of take out 06, 07, 08, which is just not normal?
Yeah, yeah, we had, our revenues are back down below, you know, they're in the, as far as our total revenues, are probably in the early 2000s, you know, 2003, 2004, right in that time frame. We've had a lot of expenditure increases, honestly, you know, since then. That really don't equate to going back even further into the late 1990s. PERS comes to mind, health insurance, you know, those are very structural costs, and they're real costs. So even though our revenues are probably higher than what our staffing levels might be, our structural costs, if you will, as far as our personnel costs, are quite a bit higher.
Just
That's
as an
the short
example,
answer.
We'll try and put some comparisons out there at that, so that you can all see that, because that's really a great question. But just as a comparison of how some of the costs have gone, you know, our healthcare fund, where we have a good healthcare plan providing good benefits, in 1990 consumed right around $3.8 million. What we have now is a healthcare fund that consumes about 7.3 million or higher, depending on what happens in the project here. But it was 7.3 versus 3 million. So you can see that cost, which is incremental, has doubled. I don't know the PERS rate in 1990 off the top of my head, but we'll put that in there because our PERS costs have also increased to follow the cost of retiring salaries. And remember that in the 90s, there was COLAs, there was expansions of the PERS system, and they have been chipping away at us. I think they've done 2 to 3 rate increases, but let me verify that fact. But the point is, those costs went up. So, you know, in that mix, you know, 80% of our costs are related to employees, and they rose, and now they've obviously fallen. And that's really a great area of challenge. Probably the biggest factor in our budget is personnel. Conversely, that's where you'll see most of the answers to your question. You're absolutely right about the bubble. And the bubble was not created in Sparks, Nevada. It really occurred in a lot of the western states because of the availability of money for development and money for mortgages, and it put a bubble. The bubble in our community, Reno Sparks, was over 6,000 homes that were above market. And when you put a bubble in like that, you have to wait for a normal pattern to redevelop. And that normal pattern won't reestablish itself until you go through the foreclosure cycle. And you're absolutely right again, that you won't see that happen again because the banks and the feds won't be fueling that kind of speculation. And that's a big part of what will slow down our recovery here. Our best cure, number one thing we can see that turns this thing around fast, is the creation of jobs. 14% of our citizens are unemployed. There's 14% less that are shopping, buying, doing livelihoods. Parts of our population will begin to exit this area to find work. That's happening in construction sectors. We've all seen that happen. Major builders no longer have a presence here. We have a couple of things to look for there. Is we're a very attractive place to live. You get up on any day in September and you're in one of the best environments, I think, anywhere in the western United States. And I think we're going to see that growth in jobs. And it's not in the pipeline today because the banks are hanging on to capital. And they're going to have to put that into smart investments. And I think Nevada's situated very well. But it does forecast that it will be a slow climb out. The housing market's not done with its bubble, but it's this job market that's got to begin to grow and feed that pipeline. And hopefully, we'll get more Now Foods. They're building on Vista Boulevard, who've chosen to relocate here, putting people to work. Just last week, French Gourmet came through our building department, and they make pastries, and they're relocating from Hawaii into Sparks. They're going to be down on Spice Island Drive. They actually manufacture and distribute from there. So those efforts in economic development are the ones we've got to start picking off, and that'll get our workforce back. Questions? All right, I'll turn now to the focus groups. This has been a very important tool, and I really want to thank the employees for participating over the last couple of years that we've done this. And it's been part of bridging communications, getting the why did you do that? Boy, I think that's dumb questions, you know, kind of to the forefront. And we've been answering those and putting those out in our happening news, and we're being responsive to the questions that you've raised. Right now, we've answered the questions from last year. But we wanted to say to you, if there's something you still want to ask, go ahead and ask it. Send it in to Teresa Gardner and get that answer out there, because when you have answers, it's going to be much better for you as an employee than for you to be a question of guessing. And we're putting out the answers based upon what we know to be true. And we're never going to agree precisely on things, but we are going to answer your questions truthfully. And that's our commitment to you. And we intend to continue using that process. We have created a customer service calendar. As you come into City Hall, we have taken our revenue division, turned it around to face the front door, combined that with our permit staff, and we have some folks that are working very hard to create a different customer service experience where folks can walk into City Hall, be greeted, conduct an awful lot of business, and carry on. Our recognition of what we get back from our community is going to be measured on that value of the individual customer service transaction that you conduct. Whether you're seen on a paving crew, working in a park, working in an office, and your phone rings, we need to focus on our customer service. Negative images, a psychologist will tell you it takes 9 or 10 positive messages to overcome a negative. We can't afford that with so few employees doing so much. So I would ask you all to take back the theme of customer service. We also have folks that bounce around because we're a complex organization. Not many businesses go from fire prevention to parks maintenance to running community centers to providing police patrol, and writing tickets and telling you to cut your weeds down. We're a very diverse community. We have a new number. It's the city information line. If you get a chance, someone asks you something, send them to this number. And that will put them in a queue to go through a process to get an answer. And we want to take some of these answers that are going to be repetitive and build frequently asked and answered questions and get that out so that more of our employees can see the complexities and see the route to follow. So that's a thing that we're going to be working on in customer service in the year ahead. We just finished an internal services survey, and this was started by Assistant Manager Driscoll when he ran our administrative services department because he was charged with making sure we were providing good quality services in the support roles and in the roles that keep our city humming, like health benefits and risk management and computers and those types of things. Well, in our reorganization, we didn't want to lose that survey. So Steve led our efforts to put together a wider net. And we also asked an important question this year about morale, because morale has been an issue for you with focus groups. You've been under tremendous stress for job security, your paychecks. We've all experienced that. And the important questions you're asking in there, we want to make a path of change. Not that we can change what we're required to do, to make sure that we're focusing on what we're hearing back from our employees. This survey was just released, and it had a 23% response rate. And these are the areas we included in the survey. These are all important components to maintaining the ability for our frontline employees to do their jobs. We were seeing declines in timeliness, satisfaction, and quality in several areas. Less employees there, more stressful time. We're not able to work through solutions when we're in a period of de-evolution to the degree that employees need to feel safe and have job security. And we need to focus on that. We had purchasing. We're down to one purchasing person. That's Dan over here. And he's doing a marvelous job, being very service-oriented. And he's done something that is very positive, is he's built this network to every department. People know to safely come to him with technical questions, and he's getting the work out. And so things looked very good there. Risk management, workers' compensation, and group health all showed areas of improvement in the last year. There's a lot of morale issues. Create a positive work environment is probably at the top of the list. And celebrate accomplishments. Pay, benefits, and job security, those are clearly on the minds of our employees. It's been a rough time being a city employee in this rapid decline. Showing appreciation and respect is something our employees want to see more of. Truthful communications. The door is open. Ask the question. The numbers are the numbers. You can spin numbers, but we're always spinning those numbers against the policies and the directions we're trying to implement. And it falls to a set of executives to set a course. And for the challenges we had, I think our course got us to a place which was intended to do. And that's a downsized organization that is, at this point, able to talk sustainability as it attacks the future. The truthful communications will be maintained. And if you're not seeing the truth, have an obligation to let us know. Let us know what you're seeing as not being the truth, and that's important. Equality. Employees want the different bargaining groups, the different sets of employees to be treated equally. Great common thread throughout that survey. Very difficult to deliver in the reality of stacking core services, what's most important to what's least most important. There's not one employee here that isn't a valued member of our team, and that's not what I'm saying. We will be entering into collective bargaining with our union groups beginning next fiscal year, and that will be a time and a place for us to return to that. I would hope, though, that we could continue to work with our healthcare community to find a set of solutions between the management's proposal and what the employees find to be something that they would like to do. And it's, again, a question of where we want to put the dollars we have for salaries. We see in many areas of the city an opportunity for an employee management of their own health care to put more money in their pocket. And preserving the health care plan so that it's an effective network to maintain the health of our employees is something the employees have to decide on the change for. Those are the facts as I know them. But keep in mind, we're looking for change. The path forward on health, if we continue down that track, will lead to us having to do things which place us in balance with our revenues. Because healthcare costs are going to increase. And I say that with large confidence because Renown and St. Mary's both lost millions of dollars last year. And they won't stay losing millions of dollars for long. The one hospital that eked out a profit last year was actually Northern Nevada. But St. Mary's and Renown both had very, very troubling years. You'll also see the pressures of the Obama health care plan and changes in the Medicare amounts that doctors get when they take patients with set amounts of payments. Those are also going to have implications. And our healthcare committee needs to keep meeting and keep looking for solutions that prepare us for the future in that area. You okay, Mike? Okay. Other questions? That was a great one. Thanks, Mike. Anyone else? Well, I'll just say good morning and thank you
Hey,
for
Sean.
coming. There's one.
Star bonds. I know everybody has an opinion on those, especially in the leadership in the community. But how bad has that hurt us to pull out?
I'm sorry, pull out.
Pull out of our recession, with our revenue, our finances? I mean, how bad do the star bonds hurt us to anticipate to build revenue?
You know, it has had, it has not had the effect it was designed to do. You know, we expected a much larger completion of investment by that project in our community by this point in time. And that's been the biggest concern. If the banks, which are different animals today, had put more money at the beginning, we would have created more critical mass. Our developer is very close to solving about an 18-month battle with a banking syndicate who gets direction from the Federal Reserve to cut your pie, your percentage of loans in this area. And so 2 of the 7 banks have fallen out. And through 18 months, they've slugged this out. But they are at a point of breakthrough. And you will see, beyond the construction that's going on now, in 2012, a very positive year on star bonds. And it will begin that construction. And in subsequent years, that critical mass will be there. There is lots of capacity there, and when you get some more critical mass in terms of experiences there, it'll take off. We do get a return of 25% of the sales taxes off that project to the state, and that's what flows off that project is 25% of it. And from that 25%, about 11% comes back. So it's not the full quotient we were getting, but it was certainly a shot in its arm. And it does have the effect of, when it reaches critical mass, of turboing out those bonds so that they'll disappear. And when that happens, that full sales tax will begin to flow for the city. And that's really the coming year. You know, the target and those types of things, you know, those are, those were real. You know, we got our share of $24 million worth of sales at Target, went off to the state at 7.5%, 11% came back. Yeah, that was a hit. But a bigger one is the loss of so many revenues across the city. And you know, the businesses that you've seen close out in Spanish Springs and the businesses that you see closing today, that's where the real need of this is to fill that unemployment gap so that we can preserve the spending patterns to sustain the retail we have. But I think you'll see a good year in terms of the construction leading to the creation of a more synergistic project out there that will put it on its path, which, you know, since 2007, banking has been a tremendous challenge. Linda.
Would there have been more money for the city employees' payment if we had not done star bonds, Sean?
You know, it's a great question. The project out there was very, very challenged. As all of you know, it was the former Helms production site, had a failed outlet mall that had sat empty since 1991 with very I'll just say no retail opportunities that are going on there. And our efforts there have led to the creation of something that could achieve, $300 million of investment, and we're right around 115 right now. So we have quite a distance to go. And I think that's the upside for the city. You could have put industrial boxes on that site, and that was what the market was. We turned away one shopping center that was going to go there. It had a maximum value of $68 million. So we are looking at the upside of a project that will today hit about $300 million of value, and something at its highest proposal in the 20 years I was here was one shopping center. And the most likely use on that site would have been a continuation of the big box pattern. And I thought that would have been a real shame with that freeway access and that beautiful lake. So it's not zero that's coming off that site, but I think the potential in the future you've established is one which is much more positive than what was going to occur in the market. And there is a hotel casino out there, and they're struggling to find financing. And you can look at the casino numbers every month in northern Nevada and see that that's going to be a while. So it'll take a while for that to happen. Thank you. That's a great question. Brandon?
So what's going on with the Lazy 8? I haven't heard anything, seen anything on that for quite a while.
It's the market.
Is it dead, or are they still fighting?
It's not dead, but you will not move forward on that project until market forces create a demand for it. And the amount of casino capacity we have in this community as a region is in a condition of excess. So it's very hard to create interest by commercial bankers for the rates of return that you can get on an investment here. So there's a very good owner there. It's owned by the Pepper Mill. You've seen what they've done with their Reno property, and they own that, and they intend to build on that, just the same as the economics dictate that that would be profitable. And I couldn't tell you if it's this year, 3 years, but it does take a return to a positive growing economy in our tourism sector.
How about the Silver Club location? Anything going on downtown with the Silver Club location?
I talk to that ownership group about every 3 months. And right now, they're in a life preserver mode. They're trying to preserve their gaming license, and they'll keep doing that pattern. It has been bought, and the owners that have that are doing well in the family of properties they bought in Nevada. And their business plan was to turn those around, make those profitable, so that they could bring a profitable package to the reinvestment that's needed in the Silver Club. They look at it on a constant basis of what's the right move in this economy, and can they overcome or reopening that big building in this market. So it's in a very similar situation to what the Lazy 8 is. And that's it'll take the ability for someone to show there's a market, there's a demand, but they're poised to do it. They are not an underfunded developer. They're not someone doing speculation. They're someone who is investing in Nevada and other areas and has a clear goal of making that asset work. It's sat vacant for a number of years now. That's always a challenge. Rebuilding a market, refreshing that building at this point, and that's all in their thinking. But it's not slated for demolition. Their business plan is to find a way to enter this market in incremental steps and make use of their asset. It's not the Mapes. Okay. Other questions? Councilman Lawson has joined us. Thanks for coming in. Any other questions out there? Okay, well, thank you very much for coming today. I sure appreciate it.